meet and greet between specialist family violence services and the Vietnamese community, organized by the Buddhist Council of Victoria in conjunction with Venerable Hook Tan and his amazing team here at Quang Minh Temple. I'd like to begin by making an acknowledgement of country. I pay my respect to the original traditional owners of this land, their cultures, country, and elders past, present, and emerging. We're gathered here today as part of the Victorian government's initiative to prevent family violence within the multicultural faith community. And today we've got, this is organized by the Buddhist Council of Victoria that has a multicultural prevention grant organized, granted by the state government. This is run by the Department of Families, Fairness and Housing. So we've got the president of the Buddhist Council of Victoria as well as the secretary here today with us. And we've got a range of speakers tonight going to talk to you about the kind of services they offer in order to help victims of family violence and also to prevent family violence. So before I introduce the speakers and get them to do their presentations, what I would like to do is have a moment of silence in honor of all the victims of family violence. Please. If you can stand up. So without further ado, we would like to commence by asking the presenters to come forward and speak on their relevant topic. I'm not going to give a detailed introduction of the presenters, but first of all, we've got Marie Spain here. Could you kindly step forward and introduce yourself?
Thank you everyone for having me today. So my name is Maurice Premier. I work as the Justice Health Cluster Lead at CoHealth, and that means I manage some programs including the Integrated Family Services and Specialist Family Violence programs, the Victims Assistance Program, Forensic Mental Health Program, and a Specialist NDIS Program. And I'm here to talk to you today about the services that we have relating to family violence at CoHealth. So we have, in the Specialist Family Violence Services, we have family violence case management. We have the family violence counselling for the West and the North. We have the Victims Assistance Program. We run family violence groups, which include parenting after violence and sing and grow groups. So perhaps we could, I'll just go through and explain those services. Case management services at CoHealth. We have workers that can work specifically with women who are at high risk of family violence. They work with women for a total of about 13 weeks. And the aim of this work is to keep women safe. So they can look at packages to keep women safe. So we can look at if a woman's phone might be monitored, for example, we can fund a new phone. We can look at alarms to keep women safe in their homes. We can provide support to women in terms of going to the police, intervention orders, and going to court as well. So we provide a large range of services. For women who identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, there are specific services in the West that women can go to for case management services, but sometimes women want to go to a generalist agency, and in that case, we provide support through our Aboriginal health team, as well as our family violence case management services. We take our referrals through the Gen West, which was the Women's Health West. If people might remember, they've recently changed their names. We really believe in working in allocations meeting and knowing that we can all heal from traumatic events. And I think that that's one of the most important things for people to remember. We take our referrals directly through CoHealth, through the Family Violence Counselling. We're assuming that the women on our Family Violence Counselling wait list are not in active danger. We do a risk assessment every time we place someone on our wait list. We also do a safety plan, which means that we support women to know how they can keep themselves safe, and that could be, accessing police, looking at other services that can help, maybe getting a bag packed so that they can leave quickly, alerting families or friends that they may require support immediately. So these are the ways that we support women to develop safety plans, and that's a big role of the case management as well. But we also do it in the counselling team. You might have heard of the MARAM risk assessment. It's quite a high-level risk assessment that we do. And as a specialist family violence counselling service, we do the highest risk assessment, and it looks at the safety of children as well. Thank you. There's no cost to any of our services in family violence as well. We run a lot of group work at CoHealth as well. One of the groups that we run is the Parenting After Violence, and we've been running that group online through COVID. It was always a face-to-face group, but we've actually found that it's working really well because it enables women from Wyndham Vale through to Footscray to attend the group, and women don't have to try and find childcare for their children before they can come to the group. So we're finding that that's been working really well for the women that we provide a service to, and that's looking at communication with children and their mothers generally. It looks at how we can support children to heal. It looks at, very often if children have been through a prolonged period in a home where there's family violence, there are behavioural issues for kids. So looking at supporting those as well. Sometimes people have unrealistic expectations of their children as well. They might think because a child is 10 that they can do a lot more than they can. So, getting people to understand the developmental needs of children and the developmental abilities of children is important there.
Myself a consultation with...
We also
speaking of 10-year-olds.
We also look at relationships as well, healthy relationships and what they look like. And those are relationships where we feel respected and cared for by the people in our home. So that's what we do. The other one that I was up there was the Sing and Grow group, and that's a fairly new group for us. It's a face-to-face group, but I really love it. It's a group where it's a music therapy group, and it's for mothers with children under 5. And women sing nursery rhymes from their culture, there's music, and it's a way of promoting attachment for women and their infants. We have very multicultural groups in that group, and we ask women to bring up the nursery rhymes from their childhood that they can sing to their children, and that's gone so beautifully. I love that group. We also have the Victims Assistance Program, and that's a program where we provide support to victims of crime, and that includes men. So there are men who are also victims of family violence. It can be older men as well, or younger men, and the Victims Assistance Program provides support to them. We generally don't offer a lot of family violence services in the Victims Assistance Program to women who experience family violence, because we do have other programs to support them. But we offer support to men. Also, we offer support to anybody really that is requiring support where there's been a crime. And that can be, managing safety, also includes a risk assessment, it includes a safety plan for people. It could be organising transport for people. As you can imagine, when someone's been a victim of crime, there's a lot of trauma that they're processing as well. Communicating with police, letting them know if IVOs have been breached. So there's all sorts, applying for financial assistance. So it's quite a broad range of services that we provide there as well. So the next slide is working with interpreters. We do a lot of work with interpreters, and that's reflected in the population that we have in the West. One of the things that we can offer, sometimes women feel a bit anxious about using interpreters because some communities are quite small and they feel that they might know an interpreter. So we can offer women that they can use an alias, so they can use a different name, so they feel a little bit more protected when using interpreters. We can use interpreters on the phone or face-to-face. We don't use family or friends as interpreters at CoHealth, particularly in the family violence programs. All of our programs offer confidentiality and privacy, unless we're worried for your safety or someone else's safety, and then we do contact police or other services. And we work really closely with other services in our region to ensure safety and protection of women as well. And if you want to make a referral, of course, I've photocopied a few sheets that list on where you can get help and support for family violence in the West. I haven't spoken about what is family violence, but I'm sure someone will be doing that today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So what I'll do is at the end of all the presenters, we'll have an opportunity for everyone to ask any questions in person. Okay? So if you feel a little uncomfortable asking in front of everyone, please do approach the presenters and they'll be available to speak to you in person. All right, next we have Libby Matheson from In Touch.
I'm Libby Matheson. I'm the team leader for sector development, community engagement at In Touch. I'll begin with doing an acknowledgement. We acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the traditional custodians of the nation and the land on which we work and live. We pay respect to their elders past and present. We also acknowledge the countless women who've experienced family violence, in particular women from migrant and refugee communities. We recognise the courageous path they've travelled to rebuild their lives, and their experiences continue to inspire and drive our work. So a little bit about In Touch. In Touch has been around for more than 37 years. It started out with a couple of people in a backyard garage as the Immigrant Women's Domestic Violence Centre, and over the years it's grown. So after the Royal Commission into Family Violence, one of the recommendations was that In Touch be funded to work with mainstream family violence, specialist family violence agencies to build their capacity to work with migrant and refugee women and now men as well. So our work since then has grown substantially. So we now have a staff of about 60 people. I think 4 of those staff are men and the rest are women, and of that about 95% of our case managers, counsellors, finance, legal team are migrant and refugee women themselves. So across our organisation, we speak more than 26 languages, and our approach to family violence is about working in language and culture. So the fundamental service model is that when women come to In Touch, they get a culturally tailored, empathetic approach to helping them navigate that family violence service system. So we do use interpreters because 26 languages is awesome, but we know Victoria is much more diverse than that. So you might have Sudanese background case manager who'll be using perhaps a Vietnamese interpreter, but what's shared there is that our case managers and our legal staff have that lived experience of migration and settlement, that understanding of what it's like to be in a place where the language may be different, the systems may be different, the way you parent your children, the relationships between a husband and wife, between partner and partner, between parents, in-laws, children, can be very different. The influences that people have outside the home and in the home can be challenging. So they've lived that, so there's that ability to empathise and understand what women are experiencing. So we offer a range of services there. I'm going to start with direct services because that's our response. We're not a crisis response service. Okay, so we're open from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. For crisis response, you go through to the police or to Safe Steps. So, and I'll put those details up later. On Monday morning, we go through the referrals that have come through over the weekend, and people are, and there's an intake and triage. So of our clients, about 50% of our clients are on some kind of temporary visa. So when we talk about In Touch being a statewide service, there's still a limit with funding as to how many people we can work with. And so there is a priority given to women who really need that culturally tailored understanding of intersection of family law, migration, family violence, and case management, culture, language, all of that coming together. For a lot of women who maybe their partner has already cancelled their visa and they've received a 28-day notice from immigration, to the top of the list, because action has to come straight away. So we have our intake, case management, co-case management, secondary consultation. I'll come back to that. Once a woman is accepted as a client at In Touch, they go straight, if they need help with their visa matters, they go straight through to our immigration agent. So we have an in-house migration agent, Luba, who has been with us for 23 years. And usually when I go out to the community, people are like, Luba! Her reputation precedes her. And she will work with our legal team and with immigration and other forms of funding and brokerage to support women to shift their visa from perhaps a spousal visa into a temporary protection visa or a whole range of other visas that are possibly available or not at all. But we'll work with those women. We also do the victim of crime assistance program, and our legal team does a lot of work in that area. Court advocacy, helping women with translation of documents, legal representation, finding documents, and the costs associated is supported through things like brokerage and a program called flexible support packages, which often gets used to translate documents from a person's country of origin into English to use in the court system. Whoops, can we go back? Sorry. That's all right. Along with, you see, someone moving through that family violence system, moving into the area that Maurice is talking about, so post-crisis, someone's now free from immediate family violence and they're looking at rebuilding their lives and understanding, building economic independence, understanding how to parent in a different way. We run 2 programs, recovery groups that are in culture and language. We're just about to start one at Kensington Town Hall with the Vietnamese speaking community with Co-Health. We also run a Vietnamese speaking community recovery group in the city of Yarra each year, but we also have currently groups running in Hindi, in Dari, in Arabic and Chinese, and we run these each year, always with a partner program. So sometimes it's Whittlesea Community Connections, or it's Co-Health, or it's Chinese Community Social Services. I know that we've put together a proposal for working with the Australian Vietnamese Women's Association with the Western Bulldogs Community Foundation, so fingers crossed for that funding application. We do quite a bit we have a number of policy officers who work on looking at particular issues around forced marriage, around misidentification, and that is supported by a survivor advocates group. So a group of women who have experienced family violence are in a stage of being able to advocate and inform decisions that are made internally at In Touch, but also to other organisations like Victorian Legal Aid, Family Safety Victoria, a number of housing organisations, there's a long list, about from a victim survivor's perspective, what would they have liked to have seen a response be? So that's a very active group. Sector and community, that's where we're at now. Maurice mentioned the Orange Door. We deliver culturally responsive practice training to every Orange Door in the state and have since they started. So the last 3 are opening this year in Horsham, out near South Australia, and in Sunshine and Werribee. We will work with those staff, as well as training that we're currently doing with the refuge sector about working with women on temporary visas, and Migration Council of Australia with settlement programs around building the capacity of settlement services to work with communities to recognise family violence. And the last thing we do is motivation for change. So this is a men's program that is also run in culture and language, a 15-week program for men who are perpetrators. So it's working with facilitators from within the community around behaviour change, but also providing a really important opportunity for men who are also negotiating what it means to be a man, a father, a partner, when the cultural change and expectations may feel different here. And looking at issues of women have too much power, perhaps, as something that is around equality and equity and not a loss of power but a redistribution of power. So changing some of those stories about you're not losing power, it's just being distributed differently, and how do you still feel confident in that space but not use that as an excuse to perpetrate violence. So just a bit about our referral services. I have some information here that is translated into Vietnamese and some information in English for service providers, but information for women or men who may need to use interpreters but don't know what to do. Now, of course, these are in language, so there's always a challenge in some communities that people are not literate in the language. They might read English but speak Vietnamese. These are in Vietnamese. We don't have them in English. They should be bilingual. That's a project for the future. And some information about quick little cards in many different languages about how people can refer themselves or a friend or a family member for family violence. But Randy, I'm assuming that these presentations are going to the participants. Yeah. So each of these links will take you through to the website. of what you do if you're in immediate danger and some of the services that are on offer. And on the next page, there is some information about how people can refer themselves for support, case management support, but also how an agency can refer. I think, Jacqueline, you're going to talk a little bit about MARAM. So I'm not going to mention MARAM because it's a bit intimidating. Unless you're prescribed and a service provider, it sort of matters but doesn't matter. But understanding where you sit and how much information you have to provide. So there's different ways to be able to come into In Touch as a person online or by phone, but if you're an agency, it has to be with the MARAM referral.
We have another speaker on Zoom today, Dr. Manjula O'Connor. She is a psychiatrist going to talk about family violence from her perspective and her experience in the field. So, Dr. Manjula, can you hear me?
She's turned her off.
I think she should be fine.
Ask her to not push
Sorry
the
about that.
microphone.
Oh. Dr. Manjula, can you hear me?
Oh, you're like.
My mic is working. Hi, can you hear me? Can you start talking? Okay, so you are on camera. I'm just going to off my camera, but we can all see you and hear you.
Okay, so I'm going to speak about feminism and Buddhism and a role of and the place of women in Buddhism and how it inspires us towards thinking of gender equality. 2,500 years ago, Buddhism created a revolution in India that is recognized in religious history as one of humankind's greatest revolutions. When Buddha started Sangha, the Buddhists predominantly consisted of men. Women did not participate in the early beginnings of Sangha, therefore many women wanted to join the Sangha and yearn for equality. However, they could not get easy access. There was no tradition of assimilation, and the world was patriarchal. The world was dominated by men, and patriarchal thinking was really powerful. So looking at the Buddhist community then, it comprised of monks who were called bhikshus, and later on, when the women joined, they were called bhikshunis. And lay people were also allowed to join these sanghas, and so were lay women later on. So what we need to examine in terms of modern political thinking views on women's question is how the Buddhism helped to bring women into mainstream, and that how it allowed women to think of themselves as being free of household duties. the time Buddha began his discourse on ideology and established the Sangha, Indian women were going through dark times. Kancha Hidaya, in his book God as a Political Philosopher, writes, the Indus Valley culture of equality, that was the golden period for Indian women, that is going back some 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. The Indus Valley culture of equality had been reduced to oblivion, and its urban luxuries disappeared. And after this, the Rigveda Brahmanical society was established, in which women lost all their social and political rights. And so the patriarchal structure of family and society overthrew their social and political rights. So most of the problems that women face in Buddhist countries today have more to do with deeply rooted social values that Buddhist theories did not originate, but Buddhists have usually complicated them. In comparison with some other religions, Buddhism has had little to say about what social roles should be, since such questions have not seen as direct pertinence to religious commitments and efforts. So, with effect, then maybe that Buddhism has had some impact on the attitudes, formation of attitudes towards women. And in Buddhist literature, women were seen as fully enlightened beings, as quick-witted teachers, compassionate, courageous parents who had a positive effect on the sensibilities of women and men. And they continue to influence the scriptures, poems, and popular stories to this day. And so symbolism, which is identified perfect with
Dr. Manjula, can you hear me? I might stop you because
Stop.
to identify women.
Yes, it's getting stuck. Sorry about that. Sorry.
Yeah.
So what I will do is I'll speak to Dr. Manjula in a second. So I will get a recording. We are having all the presentations as well as summaries of the speeches. I'll make it available to the audience here today. So Dr. Manjula's speech, like she
Concern the question of admitting the women in the Buddhist Sangha.
I'll message her.
Venerables, distinguished guests and speakers and members of this temple. Just a quick introduction of my topic, and then about me, and then about the topic again. So explaining family violence. I'll go through the definitions quickly, because when we talk about family violence, I think we need to understand what family violence is. There are different perceptions of what family violence is. So I'll go through that. And I think I will also go through the legal steps very briefly. I'm not going to give you a lecture of what family violence or what the court process is, but I'll give you a few tips of the process when you're faced with an intervention order, either whether you're a affected family member or a perpetrator, the process that actually is the process that is followed. All right, little bit about me, Randy. That's me, my smiling face, and I wear different hats at different occasions, mostly good. So today I'm pleased to participate here as the President of the Buddhist Council of Victoria as well. But my role is to make a presentation in relation to family violence and the legal process. Fortunately or unfortunately, I practice in 3 substantial legal areas. I can't get out of it now because that's how I started like 20 years or 15 years back. So I practice as a family lawyer, I practice as a criminal lawyer, I also practice as an immigration lawyer, substantial areas. I'm also currently a lecturer on evidence law at Deakin University. I think that's enough about me. All right, next one. So I think I've been given 10 minutes. I've prepared slides for more than 10 minutes. So I hope when the time comes, you can ask me to shut up, so I'll shut up. But I'll finish the most important stuff before I'll finish off with the most important thing at the end, which you will see soon. So the legislative basis for family violence. So there's no single family violence legal definition in Australia because there is a federal jurisdiction and there are also state jurisdictions, and different states and territories may have their own laws and the processes and the procedures. So as you say, there is no uniform legislative definition of domestic and family violence across Australian jurisdictions, but each jurisdiction will have their own definition. So what is family violence? I put people on the spot and ask questions sometimes, but before we go through and understand the legal definition of family violence in a very broad sense, can I just ask, I've actually got a GP here as well who meets a lot of clients. So what is your understanding of family violence?
Thank you very much, Solicitor Dinesh. Actually, I'm very happy with the topic because a lot of patients come to my clinic for 40 years, domestic violence, family violence. My 95% is female, the victim, but 5% male, the victim.
Doctor, what do they say mostly when they meet you, especially women?
Yeah.
What kind of family violence do they face?
It means that the attack, physical attack to the husband and wife, spiritual attack, and make the female, depression, anxiety, so-called religion. Male is Buddhist and female is a Catholic or Muslims, for example. Or sometimes violence by another relative, such as the pet. I have the dog, I love the dog very much, but she declined that, so she attacked the dog instead of the drop the man.
Thank you, doctor. So mainly physical violence, is it?
Yes.
Right. All right, thank you. I think that's the usual perception. So there's physical violence, but let's discuss furthermore and understand what family violence includes, apart from physical violence. Next one. Sorry, yeah?
Also passive-aggressive.
Correct, very correct, yes. Sometimes we don't recognize that, and sometimes people don't necessarily understand that is part of family violence as well. So the most common form of family violence, as our doctor explained, is reported as actual or threatened violence, which sometimes threatened violence turn into unfortunately an actual violence situations. So physical violence and harm, sexual and reproductive abuse, economic abuse. Sometimes we don't think family violence includes economic abuse in various forms. Stopping bank accounts, not giving money, sort of things. Economic abuse, which we talked. Emotional and psychological abuse, as you mentioned. Cultural and spiritual abuse. Harassing and monitoring through social media sometimes. Social abuse, exposing children to domestic family violence. Well, you might think that in a household when a husband and a wife or another family members argue, that it affects children. And that's a form of family violence. That is recognized in law as well. damaging property, animal abuse. Sometimes when people don't want to hurt your partner or your relative or your friend, they take revenge using other means, like we discussed, including hurting pets, to put it very simply. So systems abuse and forced marriages. So it is most likely to be experienced by women and perpetrated by their current or former intimate male partner. So that's statistics. Now, that is in a way concerning for me personally because I'm a male. The other reason is I feel there's still lack of help for male and males don't necessarily attend anger management and certain helpful organizations or meet professionals in that area. Domestic and family violence may affect victims' physical health and functioning in acute or chronic ways even after family violence has stopped. So it can continue for a long time, especially in children as well. Yeah. 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 So, being forced to watch, participate in the violence by on a parent, witnessing violence, witnessing a parent, physical injuries, the topic is actually exposing children to family violence. Sometimes we don't think about it, but these are examples of family violence. Being neglected as a consequence of parent injuries. Now, as a family lawyer, I see this quite often, and the courts has to interfere and appoint independent children lawyers to protect the children's interest. And when especially parents fight over children, they're fighting over their rights, not about their children's right. Sometimes I represent, usually I'm a defense counsel, I represent the affected family members in family law matters. Sometimes I represent perpetrators in criminal law matters. So I have to take my client's instructions and act accordingly, but sometimes when our standards, ethical standards, require us to counsel and refer our clients to counseling or anger management situations when they try to make use of their children to get at their partner, which is a very unusual, a sad situation. So witnessing damage and destruction to furniture, toys and their family belongings, witnessing harm and to family pets, etc. So something we didn't talk, but it's included in the previous examples, is coercive conduct. Conduct aimed at dominating and controlling another. So it does not necessarily mean, or we may not see this, and it may not be that prominent, but the mental agony that people go through in controlling situations, sometimes both the victim and the perpetrator may not understand that the actions of maybe each other sometimes is mentally harming and controlling. So that's called coercive family violence. Now, am I still within time period? Yep. All right. This is the legal aspect that I want to emphasize. That is, say for example, when in a particular situation people call 000, what happens next? I think police officer may touch on that. I'm not 100% sure. But when a person calls 000, what happens? Police may attend premises. Police may separate the two parties and take statements. And then what happens? Anyone? If the police identifies that the affected member needs help and protection, they take an intervention order. So there are two ways that you can obtain an intervention order. You don't have to necessarily go through the police system, but of course if you are in trouble, if you need to call 000. But in certain other situations, which you may not get the opportunity to call 000, but you feel you're threatened and you want some protection, the legal protection is through family violence. You can go to court and apply yourself and obtain a family violence order. So the first step is an interim intervention order, and then after a hearing, because of our judicial system, we give every party a time, an opportunity, and the courts will listen, and the courts will make a final decision on the final interim, on a final basis. So the interim or the temporary intervention order will become final, or the court may decide otherwise as well. So, what are the conditions that would be included in intervention order? So, if we are the affected family member or a perpetrator, the courts will include these conditions in the intervention order, which you will have to adhere to. Now, many might not know or understand that intervention order itself is guided under civil law. So that's a civil matter. But when does it become a criminal matter? Anyone? Not asking the police officer, but anyone else? I know the answer.
Probably repeat, and then if they break the intervention order?
Yes, when they breach the intervention order, what kind of a matter is it? It becomes a criminal matter. And how does criminal matters proceed after that? So, when the police attend a particular premises in relation to an incident, the police may identify if there have been physical violence. The police may, in addition to the intervention order, charge the person. The charge may be an assault or something similar. And even if the police does not decide on the spot, which is unlikely usually, after the intervention order is given, the interim intervention order to the perpetrator, the police might later on charge you as well. And that charge is a criminal offense anyway, but I'm talking about the intervention order. The breach of an intervention order is also a criminal matter. So the perpetrators and affected family members need to be aware of the legal system, how it works. Why I said, I want to emphasize sometimes, I'm not trivializing the matter. When certain instances happen because of the spur of the moment or because of the heated argument, people do tend to act, especially males, tend to act physically violent. But then soon afterwards, they may get back together. However, the intervention order may remain, separating the party for some time. Let's go through some of the conditions for you to understand. And in that situation, sometimes it's very difficult for the police or for the courts to understand when the affected family member who goes to the court or to their lawyer or to the police and say, I don't want an intervention order, we are back together. That's a very unfortunate situation, because no one is just going to take an intervention order out. You're separated. You can't talk. You can't see your children. You can't even go to your place sometimes, and most of the time as well, once an interim intervention order is given. So my suggestion is, if there are issues, go and get help of some kind rather than getting into these stages. These are very costly, time-consuming as well as mentally agonizing situations. So these are the conditions. So first one, go back. All right. So conditions about contact. So this is if the police comes, if the police gets an interim intervention order. So in the order, these conditions can be in the order. So that's why I put it in red. Everyone needs to understand, because it's a substantial issue in our society, and it's been now recognized. And Victoria Police or the minister, which we had appearing on our initial meeting, Gabriella Williams, actually I had an opportunity to talk to her a few times in the past. She said, we are not tolerating family violence. The government does not tolerate family violence at all. So the conditions is, you must not approach the protected person within, let's say, 200 meters. So that means, say for example, if I'm the perpetrator, if I have my wife or the child or even a friend,
Friend is not a family situation, it's a different kind of a violent situation, a personal safety notice. You can't, if you are living in the same house, you can't go back to your house. Immediately you're out. Your belongings, everything will be at that house, you're out. That may be, that is actually a practical reality. You must not contact a protected person. You can't even call. Yeah? Sometimes they say unless to a lawyer. So that's when people come to me. You must not approach within a certain meters in any place a protected person lives, school, any place the protected person might go for, or childcare or the work. You must not approach, yeah, that's all right. Conditions about family law and parenting. Now, although in the state of Victoria, these cases are handled by the Magistrates Court, child contact substantially and property matters are dealt at the federal court. So if you decided, or if the situation is that you cannot get back together, if the relationship has broken irreparably, then you have to contact a lawyer or get legal aid or go to a professional, go to professionals, and then you'll have to deal with the family court system. So you can see how complicated this is, how time-consuming, how mentally agonizing this process is for both the perpetrator and the AFM. Because once this is at this stage, the perpetrator and the AFM and the children both realize, oh my God, what is this? This is an addition on top of my problems. I've got another problem now. I got to spend money on something else, on lawyers, basically. Right? Okay.
Can we stop?
Time?
Yeah.
All right.
Almost.
All right, then go to the last one. So, I thought I'd add something in relation to, from the Buddhist context, the word is nahi vere vera. It's only a part of Ho's thing that's in Pali. The meaning is hatred is indeed never appeased by hatred. Only compassion can overcome that. That's what past president of Sri Lanka went to when Japan was bombed. He went to the San Francisco seminar. And that's why Japan got easily out of the situation and they were able to get back. So I thought for us, everyone, living the present moment, consciously thinking of compassionate thoughts is actually a form of meditation. That could help us to understand our own mind, which we have never been taught in school or anywhere else. We are taught of all the sciences of the world, but not how to control ourselves and our mind. So that's where Buddhism is, in a way it's a religion, in a way it's not a religion. You don't have to have a particular race or religion to be conscious of your mind and practice meditation techniques. So with that, thank you. And if anyone wants to contact me, on the last slide I've got my, no smiling faces, but my contact details are there.
Thank you very much, Denise.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Fraser. I'm a senior sergeant and I'm also, my position is the Family Violence Training Officer for this particular area. So what happened was, as a result of the Royal Commission into family violence, Victoria Police acknowledged that we needed to ensure that we trained our members more in relation to family violence. So these positions were created, and as well as a Centre for Family Violence, which is basically a part of the Police Academy. And we now have a designated facility at the Academy where we solely, it's for the Centre for Family Violence, where all our police recruits go through quite a big package on family violence. And also we have the training officers out there. So it's my responsibility to make sure that all the members in the stations that I cover do family violence right. So I cover 5 stations. There's 21 family violence training officers in the state, and it's all our responsibility to make sure that our members are constantly updated with new legislation. And even today, when I was at Williamstown, I had a chat to a couple of members there who attended a family violence incident this morning, and we spoke about what they did and discussed about identifying who the primary aggressor was or who we call it respondent or perpetrator was. And sometimes it gets a bit messy. So that's probably why I'm here today, because you've spoken a lot about what family violence is. So I won't do that slide because we've spoken a lot about family violence. What I want to just go forward is, as far as Victoria Police is concerned, family violence is not acceptable in any community or culture, and every police officer has incumbent upon them from the point where they take the oath of office is to pursue and discharge their duty to inquire. So if anyone rings 000, we have a duty to attend that incident and inquire as to what's happened. So we acknowledge that it's quite uncomfortable to ring 000. I myself have had to ring 000 in my private life when I saw a fire happening, and even me of 28 years experience at Victoria Police still found it quite daunting to ring 000. But I encourage people that if they are feeling that they're in fear or there is harm and they are scared, to please ring 000, because the members that will attend are fully trained and understand family violence. So if you go to the next slide, we have a detailed family violence report. That report has 39 questions on there. So when members attend an incident, they have to answer those 39 questions. Those 39 questions are based off the MARAM. So that is a thorough risk assessment that we do. And the MARAM is where we've based it off. And what we've done is we're now consistent with all the other agencies out there, so that when we've done our risk assessment and we're going to make a referral to our awesome agencies, they're able to look at what we've done and decide on whether they're going to pick it up or not. The first question on our family violence report relates to coercive control. So not only are we looking at physical harm, but we're also now looking at really the ins and outs of what the relationship is about, whether there is psychological harm, whether there is pet abuse, whether there is stalking. We look right into it. We look at drug abuse, we look at alcohol intake, we look at mental health, we look at history, we look to see if the people have been involved with police before, whether there's charges. It is a full, comprehensive assessment of the incident. So we'll go in, we'll separate the parties, we'll speak to both. Usually I ask my members to swap over so we get a different interpretation of what's happened. And once they've done a full, thorough risk assessment, we will then determine where we go from there. Also, in saying that, there are 3 streams that police have priority with. The first one is criminal. Not that that means that it's priority. The second one is our civil proceedings, which is our orders. Now, police have a power on the night or on the day. If we identify that the parties need to be separated, we can issue a family violence safety notice then and there, and that will separate the people on the night. Not always, we don't always have to separate, but we may say a condition might be, and it's an instantaneous intervention order as such. And that might be you are not to commit further family violence whilst that order is in place. And what that does is that gives us some power, because if the respondent or the perpetrator breaches that safety notice, we then have a power criminally to go in and arrest that person and then remove them from the premises. So it's quite a very good, powerful piece of legislation for us with the safety notice. The third one is referral to referral agencies. We rely heavily on our agencies to help with both the respondent and with the AFM, because what we do is our police involvement is very short. We'll go in on a night or whatever during the day, we'll separate, we'll implement safety notices or intervention orders if required, but then we send it over to the referral agencies to do all the follow-on work. Because what we want to do is we want to try and hope that we don't have to attend there again. So it's all about rehabilitation. and hoping that the parties can either come together and resolve their issues or separate. So what we do is we take an incident, we do our risk assessment on the 39 questions, we'll determine what we're going to do on the night, whether or not we're going to issue a safety notice, whether or not we're going to charge in bail if need be, whether we're going to remand, or whether we're going to proceed with the summons in relation to the matters. We always generally do referrals. I know, I'm not sure whether, depending on the circumstances, whether they'll take it on high risk or not. If it's very, very high risk, we get the referral agencies involved pretty much ASAP. We also have a family violence investigation unit. They do very, very serious family violence incidents. And we have they'll look at our risk assessment and determine whether they're going to take on those matters or not. Generally speaking, they're scored and they will take on the really serious ones and take it out of the uniform members' hands. And that's usually the long-term matters that are quite serious. And then, as you can see, police are very much involved with the court, the support, child first. We also refer for children, not just for adults. We have numerous referral agencies that we work with, and obviously that's where the intervention programs come in for both the AFM and the respondent. We're very mindful that respondents they're not always men. We know that, for example, today, the incident today, as Fatal Family Violence Safety Notice position against the female. So, generally speaking, in our world, the male is the respondent, but there are times when the female is. So, we're very open to that, and we acknowledge now that police are becoming better at attending family violence incidents. So, and I think it's a lot to do with the MARAM and the risk assessment. And in terms of, we won't do that, in terms of our statements, a new legislation has come out now and we don't have to take statements of affected family members via written statements anymore. We can use our body worn. We follow, obviously, the Family Violence Act. We've got all our policies. We have safety notices, as what I just explained. So that is a very powerful tool we use. We can also get warrants out, which I'm coming in on the hard here, but I don't need to. We're very, very supportive of both parties, and as well as summonses, which is another way that we can ensure that the parties get to court. We have holding powers, so if we need to serve any of these orders on people, we can go that way. And obviously there are offences which I won't go through, that's fine. So the offences as that criminal stream. So what I'd like to get through to you tonight is please, if you feel that you want to talk to police, please either ring 000 or walk into a police station. You'll find that police are very, very understanding of family violence and they won't turn you away. There is a sergeant that specialises in family violence at every police station. So if you feel uncomfortable speaking to the constable or the senior constable that comes out, please ask to speak to the sergeant that's responsible for family violence and you will get awesome service. If not, give me a ring. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Got any questions for either Dinesh or Continue? Yes?
The questionnaire that's filled
The
out.
report, yeah.
Yep. Who fills that out? Does each
The members do.
complainant, the member fills
Members
it out
do it.
for
So,
each party?
Yep.
Present?
There's questions identifying is there coercive control? Has the respondent conducted physical harm?
And that's done by the complainant to the officer
We will ask the
and
question.
the respondent.
So the police do the report, it's our report, but there are questions that need to be asked by
Is it
us.
one report per...
No, it's one report per incident.
That's right, but
Yeah.
not per person involved in the incident.
It's one report per incident, but it involves the respondent and the AFM. So there's individual questions for
Yeah.
both, but there's also
I see.
questions about the relationship
Okay.
So, and then that is filled out. That report goes to the portal where the referral agencies will get a look at that.
We'll separate the
Score.
streams, so to speak. We'll separate the streams of what occurred, so to
Yeah, so it's a really thorough assessment of what's gone on. Yeah, and the referrals that are made for both, or whoever the parties are there. So
Yeah.
you might do a referral for the AFN, you'll do a referral for the respondent, but you'll also do referrals for children if children are present.
Thank you very much.